Hello friends and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to let a spinner wheel pick the horror books I will be reading in this reading vlog. I wrote 10 horror books. Some of them are new. I think most of them are new, and some of them are a little older, like from last year or so. And I'm gonna spin the wheel like 3 or 4 times. I'll probably read 3 or 4 books in this reading vlog, and I'll take you along on the journey of me reading them, reviewing them, you know, all that good stuff. I've seen so many people do this and I thought it would be really fun. I bought a spinner wheel for this very purpose, and plus I just kind of wanted one. I guess it's time for our first spin. Here is our first spin. Oh! So the spinner wheel picked My Darling Dreadful Thing by Joanna Van Veen. This is an ARC I have. This is coming out May 14th of this year. I am very excited about it. The cover is absolutely beautiful and I have been meaning to read it. I wanted to read it this month anyway. Since this is what the spinner wheel picked first, I will start reading this, and I guess I will update you all on my thoughts when I get a little bit into the book, and we'll talk about how I'm feeling about it and what it's about, because I actually have no idea what this is about. So I guess we'll see. So I have made it a little bit more than halfway through My Darling Dreadful Thing, and I have thoughts, not a lot of thoughts, because I don't quite know how I feel about it. This is a sapphic gothic horror novel, and we're following the main character, Ruse. I think that's how you say her name. I'm not quite sure. A lot of the names in here are Dutch, so I feel like my pronunciation could be really far off, but we're following the main character, Ruse, and she has a spirit companion named Ruth. And Ruth can possess Ruse, and her mama uses that to her advantage because her mama holds these seances. Ruse allows Ruth to possess her during the seances. These seances aren't technically authentic, but with the help of Ruth possessing Ruse, it kind of makes the seance feel real for the people that are attending. And one day, this really wealthy widowed lady named Agnes goes to one of the seances, and Ruse and Agnes kind of have a connection, and the seance doesn't really go the way that everyone expects it to go, and it kind of takes a turn, a weird turn. And because of this, Ruse ends up going to live with Agnes in her mansion. That's pretty much all I can tell you. I feel like that's the most non-spoilery plot description I can give. So I have a love-hate relationship with gothic horror. I really want to love it 90% of the time. I feel like it's more of a 50-50 chance that I'm gonna love it or I'm gonna hate it. I tend to get very bored during gothic horror, mostly because it's about the atmosphere. It's about that creeping, eerie feeling that you get. It's very slow a lot of the time. While I love those elements when they're done right, I feel like I just get bored really easily in a gothic horror story. And I do think this story is slow. I feel like it is taking a really long time to get to the point. I do feel like now where I'm at, which is on page 221, I feel like now I pretty much know where the story is going. I don't feel like there's gonna be any like huge twists or turns. I have seen some people say that there are big twists at the end, or there is at least one big twist, but for me, I do feel like the story is very obvious. I could be wrong, I don't know, but right now it just feels very typical, like what I'm seeing is what I'm gonna get. It is very interesting. I do like the descriptions of the spirit companion. I think it's very interesting and not quite what you would expect it to be like, and I like that. It's very, I don't want to say grotesque because that sounds like a bad thing, but it is very detailed and descriptive and a little grotesque, but in a very interesting way. The story is really about the relationships that Ruse has with Ruth, her spirit companion, and then with Agnes, the widow. I feel like that is the biggest part of this story. I do like them. I find them interesting, so I don't feel like I'm wasting time while reading this book, but it's not what I would prefer. I am hoping now where I'm at in the book, it's going to be more horror forward. You also get these little like transcripts between a doctor and a patient in between some chapters. So it does feel like I am reading it fairly quickly with those in as well. Those being included, I do feel like it is making it more obvious where the story is headed. I feel like it's almost made it a little bit more predictable because it's kind of leaving breadcrumbs, but kind of really large breadcrumbs, at least in my personal opinion. So I don't know, but I am looking forward to seeing how it ends. I want to see if I'm right or if it's going to surprise me. The writing's pretty nice. I mean, I don't know. I'm enjoying it, but I'm not loving it. I'm going to finish this book today, and then I will come back and let you know my final thoughts, and then we will spin the wheel again for another book to read. Alright, I am here to give my final thoughts on My Darling Dreadful Thing, and I'm kind of sad because I had really high hopes for this one, and I don't think it's a bad book. I just don't think it really works for me. There are some things I really liked about this story. I mentioned them in the previous check-in. I really liked the descriptions of the spirit companions. I actually really liked the whole idea of the spirit companions in this book. I felt like it was really different and really unique, and I liked that integration into the story. I felt like it was really cool. I think for me, the problem with this book isn't necessarily this book's fault. It's just a thing that I have with Gothic horror. I always want more from Gothic, and I'm very well aware that the genre of Gothic horror is meant to focus on atmosphere and, you know, creeping, eerie vibes, and it's meant to go slow, and the horror is not supposed to be in your face. I think the problem is that that's not the horror that I'm used to. Had I grown up more on Gothic horror and had I started reading it, I think at an earlier age, I would be more used to it, but because I'm used to horror being more in my face and having the horror elements just like really prominent, that this feels too subdued for someone like me. That's not saying that this book is bad. I think the book does what it's trying to do very well. I just don't think I'm the target audience for this book. It's very heavy on characters and their relationships. Like I said earlier, this book is more focused on Ruse and Ruth and Ruse and Agnes. Their relationships with each other, like how they interact, how they form bonds, how they love each other. Like, it's truly more of like a love story than it is anything else. I think if that's something that you really enjoy, you'll probably love this. For me, it's not what I expected. I think I just wanted more in-my-face horror. Again, not the book's fault. Totally just preference. So I can definitely see people absolutely loving this one. I think the writing is pretty good. I'm not like the greatest judge on writing. It's very hard for me to like dislike writing. I feel like the only writing I'm ever really critical on is like overly literary writing, where I feel so stupid reading it, or writing that is so clunky that I have a hard time reading it. So as long as a book doesn't give me such a hard time while I'm reading it, I find the writing to be pleasant. There is a lot of racism in this book though. Like, that's one of the things that really stood out to me. There was a lot of racism. I think I said in the last check-in that I felt like this book was pretty predictable, and I was right. I didn't feel like there was a big twist to this story, which is interesting because when I looked on Goodreads and read some of the reviews, a lot of people were saying that there was a big twist to this one and that they were like shocked by it. I personally didn't find it to be shocking. I felt like from a certain point in this story, you really know where it's going. Maybe it's not meant to shock you. I have no idea. But for me, it wasn't shocking or surprising. I felt like once I started reading it, I knew what was going on. I think that part added with the fact that it is slower just was harder for me to enjoy. So overall, I'm probably gonna give this one like a 3. I didn't hate it, didn't love it. I feel very neutral about it. I think it's good at what it's trying to do, but for me, it just wasn't a book that I typically enjoy. Okay, but that means that I finished the book, so it is time to spin the wheel again. I erased the book that I just read from the wheel, so we can't land on it again. And I didn't replace it, so I just left it blank. So let's see what we get. Okay, the wheel has landed on Chlorine by Jade Song. This is a book that I've had on my TBR for a little bit now, one that I've wanted to get to for a while. I am excited for it. It's on the shorter side, which is nice. So I'm going to start reading this one and we'll see how it goes. Alright, I am finally done with Chlorine. I was going to check in during the halfway point, but I read this book so freaking quick that I was like 70% by the time I went to sleep last night. Or basically this morning. Not really when I went to sleep last night because I went to sleep early this morning, but whatever. I was just devouring it so quickly, so I didn't have a chance to check in like I would have halfway. This book is so weird and also it's so hard to explain. I don't know really how to give you a good plot summary without going into detail that I don't want to go into. So the best way I would sum up this book is it's a coming of age story about the main character Ren, who is a swimmer, and the book is about her transition into a mermaid, and that's the best way that I can put it that's not spoilery. This is very literary. I didn't have a hard time with this book, but sometimes I did notice that the prose was a little too much for me, where I was like kind of drifting, not necessarily like sleeping, but like my mind was drifting. Like I wasn't fully paying attention, and that does happen to me with literary. Sometimes it's just so literary that I can't sit and just pay attention to it. I did really actually like the book. I liked it more than I thought I was going to, and I liked the commentary on growing up and being a woman. I felt like there was so much talked about in this book. What it's like to be a young woman as an athlete, what it's like to just, you know, be a woman, like growing up, like getting your period, having friendships, romance, just a lot of topics. There is some racism in this book because our character is Chinese as well, so that does play a part. And honestly, I'm not even really touching on a lot of the topics that were in the book just because I don't want to give too much away, but there is a lot in this book and a lot that I feel like people can really resonate with, and they're gonna really feel seen by this book, and it's really well written in my opinion. I will say that while I was reading this book, I could not get it out of my head that when I was younger, and I feel like this is a very common thing, but when I was younger, and I'm talking like elementary, middle, even high school, I would swim and pretend to be a mermaid. Like, I had a weird thing about wanting to be a mermaid, and I feel like that's a very universal experience, especially for young girls. I feel like, I mean, maybe that's just me, but I know me and my friends used to pretend to be mermaids a lot. So I feel like it's very interesting because I did feel drawn to this book in a sense because I did want to be a mermaid. I thought mermaids were very fascinating, and I felt like, well, maybe I'm gonna turn into one because I love swimming so much. So I just felt like there was a there was a connection there. I feel like this book is written for people who pretended to be a mermaid when they would swim in pools, and people who watched H2O. If you've ever seen the show, you know what I'm talking about. If you did any of those things, and you want something that's like the horror version, I feel like this is it. And it's so funny because that's such a random way to explain this book, but I swear those are the two things that this reminds me of, is just like the horror version for people who liked and participated in those things. Like, if you pretended to be a mermaid in a swimming pool as a kid and you watched H2O, the TV show, you would probably pick up this book. I don't know how to explain it other than that. I feel like if you know, you know. So I will say the things that I didn't love about this book, and they're not necessarily things that I found the book did bad or were wrong. It's just that there were some letters included in the story, and they're not every other chapter, but they are spaced between a few chapters. I didn't really care about them, I'll be honest. I didn't really like reading them. I also feel like the romance part of this book was very bizarre for me to read, mostly because it is like, I don't know, there is like a sexual aspect to this book, which I think makes sense, but they are teenagers, so it does feel, I don't know how to explain it. It's just not something that I loved. The romance was hit or miss for me. It wasn't something that I was like head over heels for. This book is also kind of gross, but in such an odd way, and it's only like here and there. Like, I feel like you'll be reading and it'll feel very normal, and then all of a sudden it's just like gross, and you're like, okay, what, huh? I feel like a lot of people will read this book and they'll be questioning where the horror is. They'll be wondering where it is. And then all of a sudden at the end, they'll be like, nope. Okay. Yep, I got it. It's a fast read, so it doesn't take you long to get to that part. It's funny because I actually figured out what was going to happen at a certain point. I was like, oh, that's where we're headed, yeah? And then it happened, and it still took me by surprise because of the way it's described. It's very descriptive. Loved it, but I did enjoy it a lot though. I don't think this was perfect for me. I don't get 5-star vibes, but I think I would give this maybe 4.5. I did really enjoy it a lot more than I thought I was going to. Okay, it is time to spin the wheel once again and see what we're gonna get. So let's go. Okay, the next book is The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Keist, I think is how you pronounce this author's name. I was just sent this book recently, and it is a newer release. So I am very interested to see what this is like, and it also doesn't seem too long. So I'm gonna start this one next. So listen, I am way more than halfway through The Haunting of Velkwood. I'm like 70% of the way through this. Look at that. I have very little to go. This is the thing. I'm not really enjoying this book, and I don't specifically know why. I don't know if it's just like a feeling, like I'm reading it and I'm like, you know, I can't really pinpoint exactly what it is about this book that I don't love. Let me explain what this book is about. It is a haunting story. It's very, very different than any haunting story I think I've read. I mean, I could be wrong, but nothing comes to mind. So it feels very different and unique to me, which I have to give the author props for, because I feel like the haunting trope is very overdone sometimes. It takes a lot for an idea to be fresh and unique and different. So I do have to give the author kudos for attempting something very unique, and it is interesting. It's just not really working for me. This book is about the Velkwood vicinity, and it's this neighborhood that weirdly kind of disappeared under this veil. That's kind of what they're calling it. Everyone basically turned to ghosts. Like, they're not a part of our world. They're behind this veil. Kind of like if you want to think of how, you know, ghosts are on one side of the plane and we're on the other. It's kind of like that. The story centers around these three girls that were best friends. And the main character that we're following is Talitha. And she ends up going back to her neighborhood to help these researchers because she wants to try to find her little sister. So that's kind of like the basic premise. And I don't know, there's something about it. I feel like the haunting isn't very important to this story, and that sounds weird, but like, I feel like if it had been swapped with something else, the story would be the same. Is that weird? I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. It just feels like the haunting is kind of like a placeholder for anything you want to put there. Like, I just feel like the haunting's not strong enough in this book to stand on its own. And the story feels like it's really about these three girls, their relationship. Something happened the night that the neighborhood went under this veil. You don't really know what exactly, but it's more about them, their lives growing up, the neighborhood, and it feels more like it's about that than anything else. And while I do think The Haunting is a very different and cool and fresh take, I'm not that engaged by it. I'm not that fascinated by it. Like, if I DNF'd right now, I probably would be like, do I care to find out how it ends? Not really. And I hate saying that because I wanted to love this, and I know a lot of people have been really enjoying this one, but there's just something about it. I don't know if it's the characters as well. Brett and Talitha, they're kind of the main two that you're looking at here. You're following Talitha, but Brett is kind of really important to the story, especially for Talitha, because Brett is such a integral part of her story. I'm not loving either of them. Like, I just don't care about them. Like, I don't really care about their relationship. I don't really care about the neighborhood. Like, I'm not that interested. I don't know. I just feel very neutral about this story. Like, I don't hate it. I don't think it's terrible, but like, I'm just not really enjoying it that much. Like, I'm not having a fun time. It is reading very, very quickly, which is great, but I'm not interested. I don't know how to explain it, and I only have this much left, so I'm gonna finish it quickly because it is reading very quickly. I can't explain it. I literally don't know. It's just a feeling that I have while reading that I'm just not caring about this book as much. Like, I'm reading it, but I don't feel like I care about these characters. I don't care enough to really know what's going on. Like, I'm just kind of like, okay, that's crazy, cool, whatever. So that's annoying. I am very close to finishing it, so I will be finishing it today here in a little bit. So maybe the ending will change my mind. Maybe I'll really enjoy the ending. I don't know. But I will come back and let you know what I think of the ending, and maybe if I have some more clear thoughts on this and why I'm not really enjoying it, I can come back and let you know, and then we'll spin the wheel for the fourth and final time. I did it. I finished The Haunting of Velkwood, and I have to say I don't feel like my opinions have really changed on this book, honestly. I feel like I still feel the exact same way. I feel like a lot of people are going to really enjoy it, and I'm really sad that I don't, because it does feel like the bare bones of it should be something I like, but I think everything put together just didn't work. I said earlier in the last check-in, which wasn't that long ago because it didn't take me that long to finish this book, it just feels like the haunting aspect could be swapped out for anything else and the story would be the exact same, because the haunting doesn't feel that important to the overall plot. That's just my opinion, and I don't mean it in a negative way. I just feel like the overall big part of the story is about the three girls. It's about them, their trauma, you know, what happened. It's about them. Specifically Brett and Talitha. I feel like it's mostly about them. That part of the story isn't that unique to me. It just feels very similar to other books about trauma and growing up, and it doesn't stand out. So I think that they're almost competing, the haunting aspect and then like the story about the girls. They just don't mesh completely for me. And I think that's what's truly stopping me from liking this book. The ending was good. I didn't hate the ending. The ending felt very familiar, very obvious, very predictable. And I think that's because the part that's not the haunting isn't very unique. It's very predictable. It's very typical. I don't think it meshes well together. I think it feels like two separate ideas and they're competing, but they don't really work together. At least for me, I don't know. My other biggest complaint is just Brett and Talitha. I feel like their relationship is very odd. So them being together wasn't something that I was like overly excited for or overly wanting to happen. I don't know. I just feel like that's kind of where my issues lie. It was a fast read, very quick, very short. I'm probably going to give this, I think, 3 stars. Okay, let's spin for our last and final book. Dang it! We just got a blank spot. Okay, try again. Yes! Oh my god, I'm so excited. Here it is, the last and final book I will be reading in this vlog. This was like one of the ones I was like super excited to get. So this is gonna be the last book and I will start reading it and come back and let you know how I'm feeling about it. Alright, here to check in on Diavola. So I am like maybe almost like 60 something percent. I have no idea. I'm on page 191 right here. So I mean like I'm almost done with this book. And I don't know how I feel about this. I say that so much and it's so true that I feel like all the time when I'm reading a book, I never know my true feelings about it. Like, I don't know. There are things I like about this book. I feel like it's a very frustrating read. I feel like I'm very frustrated 90% of the time while I'm reading it. I don't want to give too much of this book away in a plot synopsis, so the basic plot I'm going to give you is we're following the main character Anna, and she is on a family vacation in Italy. And Anna is the black sheep of the family. She doesn't fit in. Everyone makes fun of her. They just don't treat her very kindly. She's kind of the butt of the joke. Now there's some things happening in the villa that they're staying at that potentially could mean that it's haunted. That's all I'm gonna tell you. So the reason that this is frustrating is because Anna's family is terrible. They are just straight up terrible people. I would not be in this position. Like, the only thing I can think of while reading this book is I could not be Anna, because either one, I would not have shown up to this family vacation. I just would have not shown. Sorry. You want to make me the family laughing stock? You want to poke at me all the time? You want to be mean and bully me? Then I'm just not going to show. Like, I'm just not coming. I'm not the one. I'm not coming. I will not show. I might tell you I'm gonna come and then I just wouldn't show. Or two, I would go giving them the opportunity to try and prove to me that they're gonna be nice to me and better people, and then I dip the first sign and the first like stir of trouble. Like, I would have been out so fast. And I'm not talking about the like potential haunting. I'm just talking about the family. Like, forget the haunting part. Like, I'd rather deal with the haunting than her family, honestly. I would have been out so quickly. Like, you're gonna treat me this way? I'm just gonna skedaddle. I'm gonna go explore Italy on my own and you're never gonna see me again. Bye. Like, I would not have put up with it. And I know that that's super different for every person. Like, not everyone feels like that, and I get it. I totally do, but it's so frustrating because I'm just someone that I don't care if you're my family, because I don't think family treat each other like this, but whatever. I just wouldn't put up with this. Like, family or not, I don't believe family is necessarily blood, so that means nothing to me, honestly. Like, blood is thicker than water. I don't care. No. Your family are dicks. Get out. So it's very frustrating because I would have bebopped out of there so quickly. Like, screw the haunting part. Just get me out of this family. Like, no thank you. So it's a very frustrating read from my perspective because I would not have done this. I would not have stayed. But that's just me. It is very, very slow. It is very, very slow. I feel like a lot of the stuff didn't start happening until like 40-50% into the book. I feel like that's when it like started to pick up, and now we're kind of in the middle of things happening. It's gotten more, you know, chaotic. The beginning is really just a lot of Anna getting just pulverized by her family. But I like Anna. I like the way she is with her nieces. I like that she likes being an aunt and she doesn't want to be a mom. I think that is a very cool point, mostly because I am child-free by choice, so I enjoy characters that share that little bit with me. But yeah, I mean, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. I am enjoying it, I think. It doesn't feel like anything super crazy wild different at this point. I'm interested to see this last little bit of the book because I want to see if there's gonna be anything else that happens, or if we're kind of just seeing everything that's gonna happen. Like, is there more? Because if there's more, that actually might make me bump my rating up, because I don't really know how I feel about it right now, but you know, I'm floating, so we could have a higher rating depending on how this book ends and what kind of things occur in the next little bit. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting book. It's interesting. I think a lot of people will definitely relate on the family portion of this book. So I'm gonna finish this and hopefully I will have more concrete thoughts on like my feelings and know where I want to rate this one. So I will come back when I finish it and hopefully I'll be able to talk a little bit more detailed about things. We'll see. Let's talk about the one thing about this book that I did really enjoy. So I think my favorite part of this book was Anna. I really liked her as a main character. I thought she was really funny. Even when all this bad stuff is happening, I felt like she, I don't know, she had some humor there, and I don't know, she dealt with a lot throughout this book. So I really, really liked Anna. I thought she was just kind of a really great main character. I can see a lot of people not liking her. I think I read some Goodreads reviews after I finished, and some people felt like she was really self-absorbed and irritating, and I kind of understand where they're coming from. I think my opinion of Anna is that her family doesn't care about her. Like, they really just don't. They just don't care. And sometimes you have to come to a point where if they're not going to put you first, who else is except yourself? And I also think that when you've been labeled the black sheep, or you've been labeled the screw up, or, you know, the lesser person in the family, you kind of just lean into that image. If that's what they expect, then you're just gonna give them what they want, right? They expect you to mess up vacation, so I mean, if you do, you do. Oh no, you know? So I feel like that's why she is the way she is, but I personally didn't find her self-absorbed or like conceited or whatever. Like, I felt like she was actually the opposite. I felt like she didn't care about herself enough. She let everyone just walk all over her all the time, and I was rooting for her to just walk away. I was like, come on, just leave your family, get out of there, go do something else. Like, this is torture. I mean, she does have her faults, but I think that's just normal. The other thing I did really like about this book is the ending. The ending, I felt like, was very satisfying, and it gave me what I wanted, and it was kind of like funny, I guess. I don't know. I have a hard time calling this book funny because to me a lot of it isn't very funny. I think Anna is funny, and so she makes the ending kind of funny, but I don't think the book as a whole is funny, I guess. But it was overall a good ending, and I was satisfied by how it ended. I think the problem is that I suffered through a lot of the book and the ending felt so short. So not that it didn't feel like it was worth it, it was just like I had to go through 90% of torture to get 10% of satisfaction. That's kind of how it felt to me. This book is only 291 pages, which isn't long, but it felt long. Like, this book felt like it was 490 pages because of how irritated and frustrated I was for the entirety of the book. And I think that's where this book isn't going to get a high rating for me, and this is definitely a me thing. This is not like me calling the book bad. I'm not saying it's like poorly written. I'm not saying it was a terrible book. This is really just because of me. I had such a visceral reaction while reading this book, which is good. I mean, that's a book's doing its job usually when it's giving you that kind of reaction, but I was getting so upset. Like, I felt my emotions rising. I felt my anger pumping my veins. Like, I was getting worked up. I was getting into like fight or flight because of how the family was towards Anna. Like, just the things that happened and the behaviors, it was making me super upset. And it was almost uncomfortable. Like, I could feel like my legs getting restless, and my body was like having an actual like physical reaction to my reading because I just couldn't deal with it. And that's definitely a me thing. Obviously, like I said, I know so many people are gonna love this and they're probably gonna find it really relatable, and I can see that and I can recognize that it's relatable, but it also was like such an irritating read. Like, I was just super agitated while reading it, and I couldn't really get past that, and it felt like the book was taking so long. I was just waiting for something to turn around because I was getting so like worked up about it. So it made my reading experience not really as enjoyable. I think that's the problem. So I'm probably, I hate to say it, but I'm probably gonna give this a 3.5. I wish it was closer to a 5. I can't even see myself giving it 4. I was hoping I could give it 4. The things I like about this book don't outweigh the things I didn't like. So I think it's just gonna have to be below a 4, which really sucks. I was really excited about this book. It's one of my anticipated releases of this year. I had such high hopes. I don't know, I didn't love it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. All right, friends, that is the end of the vlog. That is the end of the spinner wheel controlling what horror books I read for this week. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, let me know. If you want to see more videos with the spinner wheel in them, also let me know, because I loved this and I want to use the spinner wheel way more. So if you have any ideas, or you just want me to do it again, please let me know. And as always, let me know if you've read these books and you agree or disagree. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you haven't already, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I also have a Patreon linked down in the description box. We can become friends, talk about books, horrifying books, thrilling books, romance books, manga, all that good fun stuff. And with that being said, I hope you are having a great day, night, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!